The cash is due tomorrow. My father ordered me to take on my sister's massive $350,000 debt. No delays, he firmly added. I smiled and calmly said, all right. Just 6 hours later, I was at the airport. When he arrived for his money, he discovered just my locked door and a certain box he opened, then shrieked. You know, sometimes life throws something at you that just snaps you in half. But what if that breaking point was actually the moment you finally became whole? Because for me, that's exactly what happened the night my own father looked me dead in the eye and demanded I hand over $350,000 for my sister's latest screw-up. And I just smiled and said, okay. He had no idea what I really meant. And, trust me, what happened next will make you question everything you thought you knew about family obligation. To truly get why I disappeared that night, you need to understand my family. My dad, John, built a successful real estate business, but he ran our family the same way, absolute authority, no questions asked. My mom, Susan, was his perfect counterpart, the perpetual peacekeeper, always smoothing things over with quiet submission. Then there was Amanda, my younger sister, 3 years my junior, but light years away in responsibility. While I was out there earning straight A's, working part-time jobs since I was 16, Amanda just floated. She'd fail classes, but still get praised for trying her best. She crashed cars and magically, new ones appeared. She'd quit jobs because they were too stressful, only to land on her feet, usually with my parents' money. My mom would always say, Amanda is more sensitive than you, Dahlia. You're the strong one. You can handle things. And I did. I handled working 30 hours a week with a 4.0 GPA. I handled applying for every scholarship under the sun so I wouldn't burden my parents, even though they paid Amanda's full tuition when she decided, on a whim, to study fashion design. College was a stark contrast. I was juggling jobs and internships, living in a cramped apartment with 3 roommates just to save a few bucks. Amanda? She was posting endless social media updates from parties and spring break, living in a cute downtown studio, all paid for by mom and dad. When I graduated with honors in finance, my parents left early because Amanda had an emergency, which turned out to be a breakup with her boyfriend of 2 weeks. I built my career methodically, brick by brick. Started as an analyst at an investment firm, worked my way up to senior advisor through sheer grit and countless late nights. By 29, I'd saved enough for a down payment on my own modest, but perfect 2-bedroom home. That house represented everything. Every extra shift, every vacation I never took, every single dollar I'd painstakingly saved instead of spent. As we hit our late 20s, my relationship with Amanda just deteriorated. I was establishing my financial independence, but her lifestyle? Still subsidized by our parents and increasingly by me. The first major bailout happened 4 years ago. Amanda decided to launch an online clothing boutique. She needed $15,000 for inventory, but her credit cards were maxed and banks had denied her a loan. My dad called me. He didn't ask me to help. He told me, "Help your sister out, Dahlia." I transferred the money the next day. We set up a payment plan she followed for exactly 2 months before the excuses started. The business folded within a year. The second time, Amanda got involved with a wealthy man who, surprise, turned out to be married. After a messy public confrontation with his wife, Amanda was sued for property damage and emotional distress. Another $20,000 of my savings vanished to settle that mess quickly and quietly. The third time, just 6 months ago, involved an extravagant apartment lease Amanda couldn't afford after quitting her fashion magazine job because her boss was totally toxic, $35,000. That covered her lease termination, outstanding rent, moving expenses. After that third bailout, I hit my limit. I had a serious conversation with my family. This is the last time, I told them firmly during a tense dinner at my parents' house. I love Amanda, but I cannot keep funding her mistakes. I have my own financial goals. My father's tone made it clear there was only one acceptable answer. And what could be more important than helping your sister? He asked, his voice chillingly calm. My future, I replied, my hands trembling slightly under the table. I've been saving for years to take a sabbatical and travel. That money has a purpose. My mother, bless her heart, jumped in with her usual placating tone. Of course, you deserve your trip, sweetheart. Amanda promises this is the last time she'll need help, right, Amanda? Amanda nodded, looking appropriately contrite. I swear, Dee, I'm going to get my act together. New job interviews lined up already. Part of me always wanted to believe in that family fantasy, that we supported each other equally, that my sacrifices were appreciated, that things would eventually balance out. My life, for once, was actually going well. A promotion to senior investment advisor was on the horizon. I'd been dating Michael, an architect with kind eyes and a calm presence, for almost a year. And most importantly, my travel fund was nearly complete. 5 years of careful saving for a dream I'd held since college, a year exploring the world, experiencing different cultures, finally putting myself first. I'd even created a detailed travel journal, mapping out my itinerary, Thailand first, then Vietnam, Japan, making my way across Southeast Asia before heading to Europe. Every detail lovingly planned, my reward for years of responsibility and hard work. For once, everything seemed to be falling into place. I should have known it was too good to last. The call came at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. I was reviewing client portfolios when my phone lit up with my father's name. Dalia, family meeting tomorrow morning. 8 a.m. sharp at the house, he barked, no preamble. Dad, I have client meetings all morning, I replied, already feeling the familiar tension creep into my shoulders. Cancel them. This is family. 8 a.m. He hung up before I could respond. I texted Michael. Family emergency apparently. Meeting tomorrow morning. Already dreading it. His response came quickly, want me to come with you? The offer warmed me, but I declined. Michael had met my family only twice, and both occasions had been uncomfortable. My father dismissed his architectural career as drawing pretty pictures of buildings. My mother hovered anxiously, and Amanda had flirted with him despite my obvious discomfort. I wasn't ready to subject him to a full family crisis. I arrived at my parents' house at 7:55 the next morning, steeling myself as I walked up the familiar brick pathway. The moment I stepped through the front door, the atmosphere hit me like a physical force. My mother paced the living room, wringing her hands. My father sat rigidly in his leather armchair, face set in grim lines. Amanda was curled on the sofa, eyes red and swollen, occasionally letting out dramatic sobs. What happened? I asked, remaining standing, my bag still slung over my shoulder. Your sister has gotten herself into a situation, my father began, his voice controlled, but with an undercurrent of fury. Tell her, Amanda. Amanda looked up at me, mascara smeared beneath her eyes. I made a mistake, Dee, she whispered, her voice breaking. Just tell me what happened, I said, already feeling my bank account draining. The story emerged between her sobs and my father's impatient interruptions. Amanda had tried to launch another boutique, this time a physical store in an upscale district. She'd been denied conventional business loans, no surprise there. So, she'd turned to what she called private investors, but were clearly loan sharks charging exorbitant interest rates. $350,000, my father finally stated, looking directly at me. That is what she owes, and they want it within 2 days. The amount hit me like a physical blow. $350,000. My travel fund, my entire savings, couldn't even cover half of that. Are you serious? What could possibly cost that much? Retail space renovation, premium inventory, marketing campaign, Amanda muttered, barely audible. The interest built up quickly when I missed the first payment. These are not people you want to owe money to, my father continued. They've made threats. Legal action at minimum, but they implied worse. I looked at my mother, who was now clutching her chest. Why not go to the police if they're threatening her? I asked. And have Amanda's reputation ruined? Have our family name dragged through the mud? My mother exclaimed. Your father has worked decades to build his standing in this community. Of course. The family reputation mattered more than actual safety, or, heaven forbid, Amanda facing consequences. I'm trying to liquidate some assets, my father continued, but most of my capital is tied up in developments that cannot be easily converted to cash, especially not in 48 hours. My mother added, we would never ask if there was any other way, sweetie. But they weren't asking. Not really. The expectation hung in the air, unspoken, unmistakable. I was the solution. Again. What about the business itself? The inventory? I suggested, desperately grasping for alternatives. Worthless, my father dismissed with a wave. The lease is underwater, and the merchandise was mostly on consignment. So there is literally nothing to show for $350,000. I asked, incredulity creeping into my voice. Amanda started crying harder. I tried, Dee. I really thought it would work this time. I had clients interested, but then supply chain issues delayed everything, and the contractors went over budget with the renovations. I tuned out her excuses, a familiar script I'd heard variations of for years. Meanwhile, my father's eyes never left me, calculating. My mother had moved to sit beside Amanda, rubbing her back in small circles. Dahlia, my father finally said, his voice taking on the tone he used to close business deals. You are in the best position to help. Your investment portfolio is substantial, and you have your travel fund. The casual mention of my travel fund sent a chill through me. I'd never told him the specific purpose of my savings, only that I was saving for future plans. The fact that he knew exactly what it was for and still expected me to hand it over spoke volumes. My travel fund would cover maybe half of that amount, I said carefully. And it took me 5 years to save. You can travel later, my mother chimed in. Amanda needs help now. Family comes first. Family comes first. The familiar refrain that always seemed to apply only to me, never to how the family treated me in return. Why is it always my responsibility to clean up these messes? I asked, feeling a rare flare of rebellion rise within me. I've bailed Amanda out 3 times already. I have my own life, my own plans. Plans that can wait, my father said dismissively. This is an emergency. Diameter Amanda's safety could be at risk. I looked at my sister, who had managed to compose herself enough to check her phone between sobs. Did you even try to solve this yourself before coming to me? Did you look into bankruptcy protection? Negotiating a payment plan? Anything? There is no time for that, my father interrupted before Amanda could answer. These people want their money now. And that was when I knew. With absolute, horrifying certainty. Nothing would ever change. This pattern would repeat endlessly throughout our lives. Amanda would create disasters, and I would be expected to sacrifice whatever necessary to fix them. The realization settled over me like a heavy blanket, smothering, but also oddly clarifying. Something fundamental shifted inside me in that moment, though I kept my expression neutral. I need time to think, I said, reaching for my bag. I cannot just liquidate my entire investment portfolio instantly. You have until tomorrow morning, my father stated. Not a request. A command. As I turned to leave, Amanda finally looked up from her phone. I'm really sorry, Dee, she said, but her eyes held the same entitled expectation I'd seen countless times before. I nodded without replying and walked out, the weight of their expectations following me like a shadow. I didn't even make it home before my phone rang again. My father. Calling to ensure I was already working on the money transfer, no doubt. Dahlia, I expect solutions, not evasion, he said immediately when I answered. I'm trying to figure out what's possible, I replied, pulling into my driveway. $350,000 isn't pocket change, Dad. I can't just withdraw that on a whim. This is not a whim. This is your sister's well-being. His voice hardened. I need the money tomorrow. No delays. Dad, be reasonable. Even if I agreed to this, which I haven't, financial institutions have withdrawal limits. There are processes. Figure it out, he cut me off. You work in finance. Use your connections. I took a deep breath. What about other options? You could take a second mortgage on your house. Amanda could sell her car, her designer wardrobe. His laugh was cold. The house is already leveraged for business purposes, and Amanda's possessions would barely make a dent in this amount. Then what about a formal loan from a bank with you as a cosigner? No time and a paper trail would complicate things. Translation: he didn't want official documentation of this disaster. Image management, as always. Dad, I said carefully. This is my future we're talking about. My entire savings. And what is more important, your vacation or your sister's safety? The way he framed it was so manipulative, designed to make me feel selfish for any hesitation. It's not just a vacation, I insisted. It's a life plan I've worked toward for years. My entire career has been building to this sabbatical. So you can take selfies at tourist traps? He scoffed. Be serious, Delia. This is a real crisis. His dismissal of my dreams stung more than I wanted to admit. I could help with part of it, I offered as a compromise. Maybe $50,000. You could cover the rest. This is not a negotiation, he stated flatly. Your sister needs $350,000 by tomorrow, and you are going to provide it. And if I cannot, or will not? The words slipped out before I could reconsider. The silence on the other end was brief but charged. Then you are not the daughter I raised. Family takes care of family, diameter. Your mother, and I have given you everything. Put you through college, supported your career. I nearly laughed at the blatant revision of history. Dad, I put myself through college, scholarships, and jobs. You paid for Amanda's education, not mine. We gave you a roof over your head growing up, food, opportunities. Basic parenting is not a debt I need to repay with my entire financial future, I replied, surprising myself with my boldness. I see how it is, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. When we need you, suddenly we're not good enough parents. After everything we've done? Your mother is devastated by your selfishness right now. The emotional manipulation was so transparent that it almost lost its power. Almost. I need time to think, I repeated. 24 hours, Delia. Then I expect you at our house with the money, or don't bother coming at all. You will no longer be my daughter. The call ended. I sat in my car, hands shaking. The ultimatum echoed in my head, no longer his daughter. The threat should have devastated me, but instead, I felt an unexpected wave of relief. I finally went inside, dropping my keys on the counter, slumping onto the couch. My phone immediately lit up with texts from my mother. Your father is just stressed, sweetheart. He doesn't mean to be harsh. Amanda is crying again. She feels terrible for putting you in this position. We know it's a lot to ask, but family always comes through for each other. Please call me back. We can figure this out together. The messages continued, alternating between guilt trips and placations. I silenced my phone and stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of my family's expectations pressing down on me like a physical force. Later that evening, as I was researching what liquidating my portfolio would actually entail, my doorbell rang. My father stood on the porch, his face set in determined lines. I thought we could discuss this like adults, he said, pushing past me into the house without waiting for an invitation. There is nothing to discuss, I replied, closing the door. You've made your position clear. He surveyed my living room with critical eyes before turning to face me. I want you to understand the severity of the situation. These people Amanda borrowed from are not playing games. I understand perfectly, I said, my voice eerily calm. Amanda made terrible decisions and now expects everyone else to save her as always. His face flushed. You have always been jealous of your sister. The accusation was so absurd, I actually laughed. Jealous of what? Her inability to hold a job? Her mounting debt? Her complete lack of responsibility? Of her spirit, her creativity, the fact that she takes risks while you play everything safe. Those risks seem to be costing $350,000 at the moment, I pointed out. He waved a dismissive hand. Money can be replaced, family cannot. Exactly my point, I agreed. Yet, you are willing to disown me over money. He stepped closer, his voice lowering. I need the money tomorrow. No delays. I have already told these people we will have it. The presumption was staggering. He had guaranteed my money without even speaking to me first. You had no right to make promises on my behalf, I said, feeling a strange calm settle over me. I had every right. I am your father. His control finally slipped a raw shout. That doesn't give you ownership of my finances. It gives me the right to expect support in a family crisis. After everything we have done for you, this is how you repay us? With selfishness and arguments when your sister could be in danger. I looked at this man, my father. I really looked at him, perhaps for the first time in my adult life. I saw not the imposing figure of my childhood, but someone smaller, someone who controlled through fear and obligation rather than respect and love. I will think about it, I said quietly. Now, please leave. I need to make some calculations. He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded stiffly. Tomorrow morning, diameter 9 a.m. at our house, with the funds. Or don't bother coming at all. After he left, I sat in silence for nearly an hour, thoughts racing. Then, with sudden clarity, I smiled and whispered to my empty living room, okay. I didn't sleep that night, not a single minute. Instead, I sat cross-legged on my bed with 5 years of travel journals spread around me, detailed itineraries, language notes, cultural research, budgets carefully calculated and recalculated. 5 years of dreams, meticulously documented. Tears fell occasionally as I flipped through the pages, but they weren't the desperate tears of someone trapped. They were mourning tears, acknowledging what was ending and what might be beginning. The wall opposite my bed featured a large world map with colorful pins marking my planned destinations. Thailand, Vietnam, Japan, Indonesia, continuing across continents. I had visualized this journey so many times, imagining myself growing, learning, discovering parts of myself that had never had space to emerge within the confines of my family's expectations. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, staring at that map, something crystallized within me. A realization so clear, it felt almost like a physical sensation. I did not owe them my future anymore. The constant weight of being the responsible one, the reliable one, the fixer, it had been so normalized, I had never fully questioned it. But now, faced with the demand to sacrifice everything I had worked for, the absurdity of the pattern became impossible to ignore. Amanda would never change as long as she was shielded from consequences. My parents would never see me as anything but a resource as long as I allowed it. This cycle would repeat forever unless someone broke it. That someone would have to be me. The plan formed with surprising speed and clarity. Not just an emotional reaction, but a strategic decision. I would not give them the money. I would not show up for the 9 a.m. ultimatum. I would not continue to participate in this dysfunction. I would disappear. Not forever, not burning every bridge, but long enough to establish boundaries that had never before existed in my family. I would take the journey I had planned, starting immediately, rather than waiting for the original departure date 3 months from now. A curious calm settled over me once the decision was made. I showered, made coffee, and began making lists with methodical precision. What to pack, what to store, bills to prepay, people to notify. At 7 a.m., I called Michael. His voice was groggy with sleep, but he quickened to alertness as I explained the situation. Your father actually threatened to disown you if you don't give them the money, he asked, disbelief evident in his tone. Yes, I admitted. And the strangest part is how little that threat hurts. It's like it finally gave me permission to choose myself for once. What are you going to do? I took a deep breath. I'm going to take my trip. Starting today. I can't be here for their 9 a.m. deadline because I know they'll wear me down eventually. I need to be gone. There was a pause, and for a moment, I worried he would try to talk me out of it, tell me I was overreacting. Instead, where are you going first? Thailand? Bangkok. It was always going to be my first stop. Do you want company? He asked simply. The offer touched me deeply. Not yet. I need to do this part alone, I think. To prove to myself that I can. But maybe you could meet me somewhere along the way, once I've found my footing. Just tell me when and where, he promised. I have vacation time saved up. And Ilea. I'm proud of you. This is incredibly brave. His support brought fresh tears to my eyes. Thank you. That means everything right now. After we hung up, I moved with renewed purpose. I called my boss, explained I needed emergency personal leave, and was relieved when she was understanding. I had always been a valuable employee, never taking sick days, working holidays when needed. She agreed to 3 months of unpaid leave with the possibility of extension. Next, I went to the bank and withdrew a significant portion of my savings, though purposely not all of it. Enough for extended travel, but leaving some invested for eventual return. I wasn't burning every bridge behind me, just creating necessary distance. I booked a one-way ticket to Bangkok, departing that evening. The travel agent found me a last-minute seat, and the confirmation email brought both terror and exhilaration. I paid 6 months of rent in advance on my house, arranged for a neighbor to collect mail, and packed only what would fit in a backpack and a small suitcase, the essentials, the irreplaceable ones, photos, journals, a few sentimental items. Everything else could be replaced or done without. The final task was perhaps the most important. I found a decorative box I'd received as a gift years ago, lined it with tissue paper, and began filling it with documentation, a ledger of every loan I had given Amanda over the years, totaling nearly $70,000. Copies of emails and texts promising repayment that never materialized. A collection of IOUs, written in her handwriting, that she likely didn't even remember signing. Then I wrote a letter. It took 3 attempts to get the tone right. Not angry, but clear. Not vindictive, but honest. I explained why I could not continue in the role assigned to me. I expressed love despite necessary separation. I documented the pattern of exploitation without accusation. I did not reveal my destination, but left open the possibility of future contact once boundaries were established. I signed it simply Dalia, rather than the usual love Dalia that had ended every communication with my family since childhood. A small but significant shift. The box was wrapped carefully with a simple ribbon, a final gift to a family that had demanded so many. I placed my spare house key on top. At 4 p.m., my phone rang again. My father. "I expect to see you at 9 p.m. with the money," he stated without greeting. I took a deep breath and replied with perfect calm. "Okay." I could hear the surprise in his momentary silence, followed by satisfaction. "Good. Your mother will make breakfast." "Sounds nice," I said, my voice betraying nothing of my plans. After hanging up, I immediately turned off my phone, removed the SIM card, and slid both into a drawer. I would get a new phone, a new number in Thailand. A clean break. The taxi arrived at 5 o'clock. I looked back at my house one last time, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Sadness, certainly. Fear, absolutely. But overwhelmingly, underneath it all, a sense of liberation so powerful it was almost dizzying. In the taxi, I allowed myself a small smile. For the first time in my adult life, I had chosen myself. The morning light cast long shadows across my living room as I made final preparations. Having stayed awake through the night, I moved with the strange clarity that comes from exhaustion combined with absolute conviction. Each item I packed had been carefully considered, each document secured, each loose end tied up as neatly as possible. I had already withdrawn my savings, converting some to traveler's checks and prepaid international cards. The rest distributed between different accounts that could be accessed globally. Not my entire savings, but enough to sustain me for at least a year abroad, living modestly but comfortably as I had planned. The practical arrangements had been surprisingly simple. 6 months of rent paid in advance to my landlord, who seemed confused but pleased. Utilities set to automatic payment. My few plants given to neighbors. Mail forwarding arranged. I packed light. 2 weeks of versatile clothing. Essential toiletries. Important documents secured in waterproof pouches. First aid supplies. And my most treasured possessions, a small box of photos and the journals detailing my travel plans. Everything fit into one backpack and a small rolling suitcase, exactly as I had planned during years of reading travel blogs and minimalist packing guides. What remained was the gift for my family, the box I had prepared the night before. I placed it on the coffee table, centering it perfectly, the house key gleaming on top. Inside was the documentation of years of financial support given to Amanda, the broken promises of repayment, and my letter explaining my decision. The letter had been the most difficult part. How to express years of complex emotions without sounding bitter. How to establish boundaries without severing ties completely. I had rewritten it multiple times, finally settling on a version that felt true to my feelings while still leaving room for possible reconciliation someday, on healthier terms. The letter began with simple facts. I have given Amanda $73,426 over the past 5 years. I have received $2,100 in repayment. I have been told each time that it would be the last time my help would be needed. I cannot and will not provide $350,000 to cover this latest crisis. The middle sections detailed the pattern of family dynamics, my repeated attempts to establish boundaries, and the consistent dismissal of my own needs and goals. It concluded with my decision. I am taking the journey I have planned for 5 years. I need time away from this pattern that hurts all of us in different ways. Amanda needs to face consequences to grow. You need to recognize that protecting her from those consequences has only enabled destructive behavior. I need to discover who I am outside the role of family fixer. I love you, but I cannot continue like this. I will be in touch when I am ready. I did not specify where I was going or for how long. That uncertainty was necessary protection against my father's controlling tendencies and my own potential weakness if faced with enough emotional manipulation. I walked through my home one final time, a space that represented so much hard work and independence. My first real achievement as an adult. Purchased with my own money, decorated to my own taste. I ran my fingers along the bookshelves, straightened a photo frame, adjusted a throw pillow. Small, meaningless gestures of farewell. At exactly 8:55 a.m., 5 minutes before I was expected at my parents' house with the money, my phone rang. My father, no doubt calling to make sure I was en route with the funds. I answered with steady composure. Hello, Dad. Are you on your way? No greeting, no pleasantries. Everything is being taken care of, I replied, the careful phrasing technically true, while revealing nothing. Good. Your mother is making those blueberry pancakes you like. The attempt at normalcy, at pretending this was just a regular family breakfast rather than financial extortion, almost made me laugh. I will handle everything, Dad. I said, the double meaning clear only to me. See you soon. He hung up without waiting for my response. I turned off my phone immediately after, a symbolic act that felt surprisingly powerful. The ability to simply disconnect, to choose silence over the constant barrage of demands and guilt. Outside, the taxi arrived precisely on schedule. The driver helped load my luggage, commenting on my traveling light, assuming I was taking a short business trip. I smiled without correcting him and took one last look at my house before closing the door, testing that it was locked. I placed the box with the letter carefully on the welcome mat, positioned where it could not be missed. The ride to the airport passed in contemplative silence. The familiar streets of my neighborhood, then the highway, then the approach to departures, signs for international flights, each mile increasing the distance between the old Dahlia and whoever I might become. At the airport, I moved through check-in with mechanical efficiency. Yes. One-way ticket. No return flight yet. Passport, boarding pass, security screening, the practiced choreography of modern travel carrying me forward. Sitting at the gate, I finally allowed myself to fully process what I was doing. Leaving behind my job, temporarily. My home maintained. My relationship paused, not ended. And my family? Complicated. Was I overreacting? The doubt crept in as the boarding process began. $350,000 was an enormous sum, but was it worth this dramatic exit? Then I remembered my father's dismissive tone when discussing my dreams. The casual way he expected me to surrender 5 years of planning and saving. The complete absence of gratitude for past help. The threat of disowning me for having boundaries. The years of enabling Amanda's irresponsibility while demanding perfect responsibility from me. No, this was not an overreaction. This was long overdue self-preservation. My seat was by the window, offering a view of the fading American landscape as we took off. As the plane gained altitude, I imagined my father arriving at my house, expecting to find me with a check in hand, perhaps contrite for my earlier resistance. Finding instead a locked door and a box of truths never before assembled so clearly. I could picture his face as he read the letter. The initial anger, the sputtering indignation, the disbelief that I had actually defied him. The slow realization that his control had limits. Somewhere over the Pacific, I sent a single text to Michael from the airplane Wi-Fi, using my tablet to avoid turning on my phone. I did it. I am free. His response came minutes later. Safe travels. The world is waiting for you. So am I, whenever you're ready. I leaned back against the headrest, closed my eyes, and for the first time in days, I slept peacefully. 9 a.m. arrived at my abandoned house with predictable results. My father, punctual to a fault, pulled into the driveway, expecting to find me waiting with the money, perhaps apologetic for my earlier reluctance. Instead, he found a locked door, my car conspicuously absent, and a box placed precisely in the center of the welcome mat. I learned the details of what happened next from Michael, who heard from a mutual friend living 2 houses down from me. According to this neighbor, my father knocked repeatedly, then tried calling my phone, growing visibly agitated when it went straight to voicemail. Eventually, he noticed the box with the key on top. He opened it there on the porch and began reading the contents. His face reportedly transformed from annoyance to disbelief to pure rage. He shouted my name loud enough to draw attention from people walking their dogs. He slammed his fist against my front door, causing the decorative wreath to fall to the ground. She cannot do this, he yelled to no one in particular. She cannot just leave. But I had done exactly that. I was already thousands of miles away, my plane crossing the international date line as he stood fuming on my porch. My father used the key to enter my house, presumably searching for clues to my whereabouts, or perhaps hoping to find me hiding inside. He emerged 20 minutes later, face flushed, clutching the box and my letter. The emergency family meeting that followed must have been chaotic. My mother called Michael in tears, asking if he knew where I was, if I had mentioned any crazy plans. He truthfully told her he knew I needed space and respected my decision, but offered no details about my location. She abandoned her family, my mother sobbed. How could she be so selfish when Amanda needs her? Michael, to his eternal credit, replied simply, maybe the question should be why Dalia felt she had no choice but to leave. Their reaction followed predictable patterns. My father raged, threatened to report me missing to the police, though as a 32-year-old adult who had left a clear explanation, there was nothing to report. My mother alternated between tears and increasingly desperate attempts to locate me. Amanda, according to Michael, seemed more confused than anything, genuinely baffled that I had refused to rescue her yet again. The deadline for Amanda's debt came and went. What happened next was necessary, though difficult. Without my bailout, my father was forced to liquidate 2 investment properties he had been holding for appreciation. The sale, rushed and below market value, covered most, but not all, of the debt. The remainder came from my parents' retirement savings, a fact that Michael reported with no small amount of satisfaction. They had the resources all along, he told me during one of our weekly secure email exchanges. They just preferred to use yours instead. My first days in Bangkok were a strange mixture of exhilaration and guilt. The vibrant chaos of the city provided constant distraction. The humid heat and unfamiliar sounds created a sensory experience so different from home that it was impossible to dwell too much on what I had left behind. I stayed in a modest but clean hotel in a neighborhood away from the main tourist areas, eating street food, visiting temples, and slowly adjusting to the reality of what I had done. Each morning brought momentary panic, followed by growing confidence. I was managing. I was surviving. Eventually, I began to believe I might actually thrive. I established routines, morning tea at a local shop where the owner gradually began recognizing me and practicing his English, afternoons exploring different districts of the sprawling city, evenings writing in my journal, processing the complex emotions that surfaced in quiet moments. The guilt never disappeared entirely, but it evolved into something more nuanced than simple regret. I recognized it as the programmed response of someone trained since childhood to put others' needs first, to see personal boundaries as selfishness. With distance, I could begin to examine these patterns objectively. After 3 weeks, I sent my first email to Michael using a secure account created specifically for our communications. I shared practical details, my safe arrival, my accommodations, my initial impressions of Thailand. I asked about his life, his work, careful to avoid direct questions about my family that might put him in an awkward position. His response came within hours, warm and supportive, without pressure. He shared news of his latest architectural project, mentioned a book he was reading that reminded him of me, and only at the end offered limited information about my family. "Your parents came by my apartment looking for you last week. I told them what I knew, which is that you are safe and needed space. Your father made some threats about legal action for hiding you, but obviously that went nowhere since you are an adult who left voluntarily. Amanda has apparently taken a job at a department store. Entry-level retail. Your mother mentioned it as if it were a tragedy, but it sounds like a positive step to me." The news about Amanda surprised me. She had always considered retail work beneath her despite her fashion interests. Perhaps necessity was finally pushing her toward responsibility. Over the following months, I settled into a nomadic rhythm, moving through Thailand as originally planned, then to Vietnam, Cambodia. Each destination on my meticulously researched itinerary. I found temporary work teaching English to supplement my savings, created a travel blog under a pseudonym that gradually gained a small following, and experienced the growth I had always hoped this journey would provide. Michael and I continued our correspondence, his updates about home carefully curated to provide information without pressure. Through him, I learned that my father had been forced to downsize his business operations, that my mother had taken a part-time job for the first time in decades to help with finances, and most surprisingly, that Amanda had kept her retail position, even receiving a small promotion to assistant manager. "The family dynamics have shifted," Michael wrote 6 months into my journey. "Without you as the safety net, they're all adapting in ways they probably should have years ago." I read his words sitting in a cafe in Kyoto, cherry blossoms drifting past the window, and felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness. This was what I had hoped would happen, but the fact that it took my complete departure to catalyze change spoke volumes about how entrenched our dysfunctional patterns had been. Occasionally, I experienced moments of doubt. During a bout with food poisoning in a small town in Vietnam, lying alone and miserable in a guest house, I longed for the comfort of familiar faces. When celebrating my 33rd birthday with strangers at a hostel in Taiwan, I felt a pang of loneliness despite their kindness. But these moments passed, and each time I emerged stronger, more confident in my ability to navigate the world independently. The woman who had spent decades being reliable for everyone else discovered she could be reliable for herself as well. Michael joined me for 2 weeks in Japan. A slightly awkward but ultimately wonderful reunion that confirmed our connection had survived the separation. We parted with promises to meet again in Europe, our relationship evolving into something different, but perhaps more balanced than before. Almost exactly 9 months after my departure, an email arrived from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read simply, "From your mother." I stared at it for a full day before finding the courage to open it. The Paris cafe buzzed with morning conversations, the clinking of espresso cups creating a soothing backdrop as I opened my laptop. A year had passed since my abrupt departure, and spring in France was as beautiful as my travel journals had promised. I had arrived 3 days ago, my 10th country on this journey of self-discovery. I sipped my coffee and logged into my email, immediately noticing a new message from Michael. We had maintained our correspondence throughout my travels, and he was planning to join me in Italy the following month. His updates from home had become less focused on my family over time, a natural evolution as my new life took precedence over the past I had left behind. Today's message, however, was different. "Your mother asked me for your email address," he wrote. "I did not give it to her, of course, respecting your privacy, but she gave me a letter to forward to you. It seems sincere, diameter. I have attached it, but only you can decide if you want to read it. No pressure either way. I support whatever you choose." The attachment sat in my inbox, unopened, as I ordered a second coffee and a croissant, buying time with small indulgences. The terrace had filled with Parisians and tourists alike, the spring sunshine drawing everyone outdoors after a rainy week. Finally, I clicked on the attachment, bracing myself for guilt trips or emotional manipulation. "Dear Dalia," it began simply. I hope this message finds you well and safe wherever you are. I have started this letter 100 times over the past year and discarded every attempt. What could I possibly say that would matter after everything that happened? But today, I realized that perhaps the most important thing is simply to acknowledge the truth, even if it changes nothing between us. I paused, surprised by the tone. This did not sound like the mother I knew, the peacekeeper who smoothed over difficult realities with platitudes and deflection. You were right to leave, she continued. I have had a year to reflect on the patterns in our family, and I am deeply sorry for my role in them. Your father and I put unfair pressure on you throughout your life. We expected you to fix problems you did not create while shielding Amanda from the consequences of her actions. We called it love, but it was not loving toward either of you. It damaged you both in different ways. My coffee grew cold as I read on, absorbing words I never expected to hear from my mother. Our family has changed since you left, not immediately and not without pain. Your father was angry for months. Amanda was confused and hurt. I was simply lost. But gradually, necessity forced changes that should have happened years ago. She detailed these changes with surprising candor. My father had scaled back his business after selling properties to cover Amanda's debt. The reduced income forced my parents to adjust their lifestyles significantly. My mother had taken a part-time position at a local library, something she described as unexpectedly fulfilling. Most significantly, Amanda had maintained her retail job for almost a year now, recently being promoted to department manager. She had moved into a smaller apartment within her actual budget and was taking community college courses in business management. She is learning to stand on her own feet, my mother wrote. It has been difficult for her, but I see a strength emerging that was always there, just never required. Your absence forced us all to grow in ways we had avoided. The letter contained no demands for my return, no questions about my location, not even a request for a response. It ended simply, I do not know if you will ever want to reconnect with us. I would not blame you if the answer is no. I just wanted you to know that your courage in leaving helped us all, though it took us too long to see it. Be well wherever you are. You are loved and missed, but more importantly, you are respected for making the choice that was right for you. I read the letter 3 times, tears blurring the screen on the final reading. Not tears of regret or homesickness, but of recognition. Something fundamental had shifted, not just in my life, but in my family's understanding. Later that afternoon, I composed a careful reply, brief but genuine, acknowledging receipt of her letter and expressing appreciation for her insights. I shared that I was safe and well, pursuing the journey I had planned for so long. I did not disclose my location or future plans, maintaining the boundaries that had become so important to my healing process, but I did leave open a small door to future communication. I am not ready to return, I wrote. But I am glad to hear everyone is finding their way forward. Perhaps someday we can build something new on healthier foundations. 3 days later, Michael arrived in Paris as planned, his familiar smile at the airport gate bringing a rush of joy. We spent the afternoon at a sidewalk cafe near Notre Dame, catching up on the months since we had last seen each other in person. Your mother showed me her letter before I forwarded it, he admitted over wine and cheese. Hope that was okay. I wanted to make sure it wouldn't hurt you. It was surprisingly healing, I replied. For the first time, she actually saw me. Not as a resource or a solution, but as a person with my own needs and boundaries. People can change when they have to, Michael observed. Though it usually takes something dramatic to break established patterns. Like disappearing overnight, I said with a small smile. Exactly like that. We spent 2 weeks together in Paris, then traveled south to the French Riviera. Our relationship had evolved into something stronger during my time away, the foundation shifting from proximity and convenience to genuine choice and deliberate connection. As we watched the Mediterranean sunset one evening, Michael asked the question that had been hovering unspoken. Do you ever think about going back? Not to the old situation, but to see the changes for yourself. I considered carefully before answering. Sometimes. Not out of obligation anymore, but curiosity. To see these new versions of my family, to determine if the changes are genuine and sustainable. And if they are, then perhaps we could build new relationships, adult to adult, with respect and boundaries. But I'm not ready yet. You'll know when you are, he said simply, his hand finding mine on the weathered wood of the boardwalk railing. The journey I had planned for a year extended to 15 months as I continued exploring Europe, occasionally joined by Michael during his vacation time. My remote work teaching English online provided sufficient income to supplement my savings, and my travel blog had developed a modest following that occasionally led to free accommodations in exchange for reviews. Throughout this time, I maintained sparse but civil communication with my mother via email, basic life updates, no deep emotional exchanges, but no hostility either. A tentative rebuilding of trust through consistent respectful boundaries. The lessons of my journey crystallized over time, becoming clearer with distance and perspective. First, that healthy boundaries are not selfish, but essential. The constant sacrifice of self for others creates not harmony, but dysfunction. True family support should be reciprocal and respectful, not one-sided extraction. Second, that sometimes love means walking away. My departure, though painful, ultimately catalyzed positive change for everyone involved. Had I stayed and continued enabling the established patterns, we all would have remained trapped in our respective roles. Third, that self-care is not an indulgence, but a necessity. The years I spent putting myself last had not made me a better daughter or sister, but a depleted person, increasingly resentful of the very people I was trying to help. Fourth, that healing sometimes requires radical change. The journey I took physically mirrored the internal distance I needed to establish, creating space to rediscover myself outside the confines of family expectations. Finally, that forgiveness does not require forgetting. I could acknowledge the positive changes in my family without erasing the history that necessitated my departure. Reconciliation, if it happened, would be based on new foundations, not pretending the past had not occurred. 18 months after my abrupt departure, I received a wedding invitation via email. Amanda was getting married to a man she had met at her community college, described by my mother as stable, kind, and financially responsible, in what seemed a deliberate contrast to her previous relationships. The invitation represented a test of sorts. Could I return for a brief visit, maintaining my boundaries while acknowledging the growth that had occurred? Was I strong enough to engage with my family on new terms without slipping back into old patterns? I haven't yet decided if I will attend. The woman who fled in the night would have declined automatically, too afraid of being pulled back into the vortex of family obligation. The woman I am becoming might be strong enough to visit briefly, to observe the changes firsthand, to participate without being consumed. Either decision will be made from a position of strength rather than fear, of choice rather than obligation. That freedom to choose based on my own needs is perhaps the most valuable gift I gave myself when I disappeared that night. So, I've laid it all out there. What do you think? If you were me, with all that history, would you attend Amanda's wedding? Or would you hold your ground and maintain that distance a little longer? I really want to know your honest thoughts. Let me know in the comments below.